This is the Pro Audio Suite podcast. Quick Bites.
Welcome to another Pro Audio Suite Quick Bite. Thanks to Harlan Hogan's Portabooth Pro and Rode microphones. We're once again joined by our special guest, Dan Brumm. But in this Quick Bite, we're talking about an ad that aired during the Super Bowl for T-Mobile, I think it was. Let's just have a bit of a listen to it.
It's time. Time to watch the drama with your family. Or you could share your family drama on T-Mobile. Share the hardcore trash talk.
I hope you got a chin strap for that wig.
I'ma knock the taste out your mouth.
Distant relatives will see every highlight. And ugly lowlight. With T-Mobile 5G, you could call in a ringer like star tight end Travis Kelce.
Mama, it's not an Anderson. There's a lot you don't know about this family. What?
Together, you and Travis Kelce would put on a display of speed and power that crushed the competition, just like T-Mobile 5G.
Somebody get him help.
I can't feel my feet.
And family and friends would celebrate as you scored the winning touchdown. Don't trust your family drama to just any network. T-Mobile is the leader in 5G.
Mama? 5G! It works in the end zone.
George, you flagged this when you heard it during the Super Bowl. What was your issue with the spot?
What bothered me was how the voice started to just get further and further buried into the mix. And so you would start losing words in the sentence where you just sometimes couldn't even quite make out what he was actually saying. And, my thought was, well, okay, I'm using a Samsung speaker bar. Maybe it's not the greatest speaker ever, but it does a hell of a good job of, imaging the center channel because it's an Atmos speaker bar, and it has, you really hear center channel stuff really well on the speaker. Like it puts the voice right out in front. And I still couldn't hear that voice sitting over under them. It was just buried. And I was like, what's going on here? And so I just put it up on my Facebook, just did a little mini Facebook rant because it's a nice way to, get engagement and get some people's feedback. And a lot of people concurred. So then I was like, okay, it wasn't just me.
No.
It wasn't just my speakers. It wasn't just me having it in a bad mood or whatever. It was just, it didn't work.
It's funny, a lot of people on your Facebook post were talking about, processing and not processing voice and audio engineers who weren't doing their job. But I don't know, for me, looking from the outside in and having sat in sessions similar to that, there's a lot of high-profile names in those voices of the people in the background playing football in the park. And for me, a scenario that came to mind that was totally plausible was that this poor audio engineer was sitting in a session where the clients were sitting at the back of the room going, hey, we've paid an absolute fortune for, this guy to do this and this. We want to hear him, man. We don't want him buried in the background. Bring him up some more. Bring him up some more. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
I don't know. I have a funny feeling that may have been the case.
It's like the mixing engineer lost the battle.
Yeah.
He just had to. Everybody wanted more of me.
Yeah.
And that's just what you get.
He needed the client fader.
That's the result of everybody wanting to be loud and the loudest.
I don't know, Dan, you've been there, done that. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, look, it always falls on the audio engineer, the mix, but often decisions are out of your hands. Like if the director and the client want something louder, like what are you going to do? They've got to be happy with the mix.
There could be another part of this, and it could be something to do with COVID. If you've got a client listening on a cheap pair of headphones, then, they're going to make really wacko decisions.
True. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could be. Robert, what about you, mate?
I didn't have such a problem with it, and I think it could be because we just listened on headphones, or I at least listened on headphones and didn't have as much trouble hearing the voice. But, often the voice is much more clear on headphones. So perhaps this whole thing was QC'd, or a heavy QC happened on headphones because of COVID and people's situations. I can see that.
Yeah. All the clients are on headphones. And
Dan, you made a comment that there's not a lot of bottom end in there. And for me, the voice doesn't have a lot of cut compared to what's going on in the background.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I know in music mixing, a big part of it is cutting out EQ notches for each instrument, right? So they all have their own little place to sit. And so I know you can't do not do that so much with human voice because they're all overlapping in the same.
But it happens in a spot naturally.
But it seemed like there was even no compression on his voice. Like the dynamics were out of control. He would go up and he would go down, and he would go up and they could have put compression on it. Like it didn't seem like there was any compression on his voice. Was it just me?
Well, there's also I don't think there was much compression. I agree, because it wasn't like really up front and kind of like it didn't have that smushed sound at all. And often with dialogue, the dialogue sounds thinner. Usually it's the dialogue that doesn't have all that bass. When you're talking about, compressing or not carving out EQ for space, often it's the voiceover that sounds more full, taking up that space where the other dialogue is maybe a little bit more filtered because it's distant. It's not meant to be up front or like the voice of God kind of thing. So I think that's one of the things, is that it was competing not only because of the volume, but just because of the EQ space. It was more over where the dialogue was and all the on-camera stuff.
I kind of stepped on you, Dan. What were you going to say? Sorry.
No, look, it's hard for me to comment because I'm not sure whether it's a streaming thing where it's, often you lose a bit of the bass with sort of shittily kind of recorded things, but it just felt like it didn't have this lovely bassy sort of presence that I wanted to hear. Seemed very sort of trebly, but I'd have to hear the spot a few more times to really comment, I think.
Yeah. I think the compression thing, is you're pretty spot on, George. I, especially on the main voiceover, I don't think there's anything. Or if there is, it's only very subtle. But,
it really, and this is why I kind of got into that. I kind of took the conversation on Facebook in that direction. He did what he was asked to do, dutifully, send it in raw. Or he was recorded on Source Connect. So he was giving it to him off the mic, off the pre, as is, just completely flat.
Yeah.
And to me, it's what it sounded like on the mix. Just a completely flat, unmixed sound.
Interestingly, in the chain that followed your post, there was a whole bunch of conversation about processing or not processing voice, and there was a whole bunch of guys going, "Yeah, I process the shit out of my voice, and I send it off, and too bad, blah blah blah." And here's the thing that if that was the case with this spot, that poor audio engineer might have had to deal with. If you've got this voiceover that's been delivered with the living shit compressed out of it and EQ'd to broadcast quality before he even gets to touch it, what does he do when the client turns around and goes, "Gee, that voice sounds a bit compressed," or "Gee, there's a bit too much top end in that voice," or "Gee, there's not enough bottom end in that voice"? There was a whole conversation that went on. Absolutely, I process everything. That's great. It might sound good in the studio and it might give you a hard on that you sound awesome. But some poor engineer has to sit in a room with 3-4 clients at the back of the room and fix your fuck up. And that's what gets my goat.
And
I didn't put this on Facebook the other day, but the more I've thought about it, the more I've stewed on it, and it really upsets me.
Dude, I tagged you in the freaking post.
Absolutely.
Man. To get your attention.
That's right. So you know what I mean? It's like it's great that you sound good. I'm so glad that you sound fantastic and that you can play that track to all your friends and go, "Look how big my balls are." But some poor arsehole has to sit at the other end and fix that shit. So anyway,
so you're sitting on the fence on this one, Robbo?
No, I'm not. Absolutely not. Rant over.
Well, I'll tell you what I've done to fool voice actors into thinking how great they sound is I've even set up chains for their monitoring, like you would for music production. So that they're monitoring through their manly Vox Box 3-to-1 compressor, blah, 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 and they're not printing it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an expensive monitoring chain.
Yeah. I mean, I have no problem with if a voice talent wants to hear something different in their cans to what I'm recording, absolutely not a problem. I will make you as comfortable as I can, but I'm also going to get the recording that I need to do the job that I need to do. Absolutely.
Right.
Okay, I have the solution.
Go on then.
It is better to record in stereo. And you as the voice actor are required to have a pumped up version of your own reality on the right side and your pure mic on the left side.
There you go.
And then it will be like parallel compression for the engineer to just do the balance of what do you want.
Yeah.
Like his version of, or their version of what they like or what you need or something in between. Like sometimes it's like, hey, sounds good. Great. Let's go. Done. Mm-hmm. Thank you for doing that for me.
I could set that up.
Yeah, I think that's the plan. Yeah,
that sounds like a hell of a compromise.
Well, if you could see my parallel compression bus, it's a an H compressor from Waves basically cranked all the way up with a really fast attack and a really slow release, and that sits parallel to the voiceover bus. So yeah.
Well, this is an interesting one for you, Robbo, and Robert and Dan. Because I've worked in studios in Melbourne, one in particular that I've worked with, and I know that he's actually running compression into my cans, but not capturing with compression. Okay. And I'm guessing it's to make me feel good about what I'm hearing in my cans. Have you guys ever done that?
I haven't, no.
I do that in music sessions.
Yeah, right. Is that just to give them some clarity over so they can sitting well over the instrumental track they're listening to?
They don't have to push so hard either.
It's to like keep them in the same place on the mic a little bit, so that they're not moving around, or I don't know, it's that. It's so that they feel that they're hearing themselves well. The music is usually like a lot more dynamic, and they want to hear things kind of mixed, and it's more inspiration when things are sounding good. It's got the energy closer to the mix.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Nice one.
I'd love it as a voiceover.
Would you?
I might set up something like this for one of my longtime clients, because he has this bizarre affectation where he has a volume knob for his cans that he rides.
He told us about this guy. Yeah.
I don't want to call him out, but maybe he'll be on the show and he'll talk about it. But he rides his levels on his cans.
I
thought about giving him a volume guitar pedal that could run his headphone amp.
Totally.
But and he's used to the knob because it's an old radio trick. He was doing it back in the day on the radio, and so he's used to having a big Bakelite Gates knob headphone level on some board, So I got some old Bakelite mixing board knobs and put one of them on a volume monitor controller box. And that's what he uses.
What's he solving?
It's wild to watch him do it.
What's he solving by
what's he trying to do?
Gain?
It's sort of an extreme version of this where once he starts to speak, he drops the can level down to a tolerable level. And then as soon as he gets to the end of the phrase, he cranks it way up. And so he's hearing the little bits of detail that come at the end of each word and at the beginning of the next word. Yeah. And that somehow helps him better articulate or hear what he's trying to perform. And I've watched him do it. In fact, I've watched him do it on a YouTube video recently because he does little videos for fans and just does it, to show him in his booth. And I'm like, there he is. There's his hand. He's doing it. And I was like, I've been trying to weed him off of it. But he has an Apollo. I could set that up where he monitors through a compressor,
George, do you know the old DBX 160X, the one rack space mono compressor?
Just has like a slider on the front.
No, that's the half rack space. The 160X is full rack space. It's got like two really long like LED meters.
VU meters,
and it shows the input and the compression. It had negative compression ratios. Only compressor I know of that has this. And
what does that mean?
Because I'm not even sure what it does. Exactly. What does that mean? I think what it means is that when it compresses, it will go below the threshold.
Really?
Oh, I see.
It'll push the volume lower than the threshold point. It won't keep it. Well, here. Once he starts talking, it goes below. And then at the end, when it goes above, it gets even louder.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So is that like an expander?
And you put that in there with like a parallel compression.
It's almost expansion then.
But is that expansion?
What is that expansion. Weird compression ratio thing on that?
That's a good question.
Interestingly, back on listening to stuff though, there's unfortunately he passed away a year or two ago, but there's a really well-known Aussie voiceover guy, a guy called Paul Ricketts, or Doc. And he didn't listen to himself at all. He would come in to voice promos for me when I was working or freelancing at Foxtel. And to do a drop-in, you just have to hold the talkback open so he could hear up to where he needed to and then just close the talkback and he'd drop in. But he was impeccable.
I've seen more classical actors want to be in the booth with just a speaker that's talked back from the control room. And then they just don't want to have headphones and they don't want to hear themselves. They just want to be just like there.
I'm sort of the same as a voiceover. Like if I'm at home, I don't wear headphones. Because I know my own voice and I know what it sounds like. And obviously I then cut it up with my headphones and Pro Tools. But the hardcore compression in your ears, like sometimes it's lovely to have that richness, but often if it's really loud and present in my ears, you end up talking a lot quieter.
Yeah,
because
you're
too loud in your ears.
Yeah.
Another trick, often I'll actually take half a can off an ear and you can hear your voice in the room then, and it kind of really helps you sort of talk more naturally and rather than sort of too voiceovery.
I do that for all my meetings and stuff. I had a broken pair of headphones, and I literally ended up pulling off the headphone and snipping the other side of the wire. And it's just like a one headphone.
Yeah, right.
Headphone for and you speak more naturally because you're not like speaking too loud. Actually, I think is what happens.
Just out of interest, Dan, with Bluey, you recording kids who clearly probably don't have as much control of their voice as others. Is there some processing in the recording chain for them to keep those little peaks in check, or do you pretty much just let them go through to the keeper? How do you do with that?
Yeah, it is tricky, the kids' voices, because they're not sort of trained actors. They often, like the way they speak, they really explode out of the gates. So their lines are it'll be a huge spike and then the thing will go down. So if you look at the waveform, it's like the first syllable is nearly peaking, then the rest is barely visible. So yeah, that's a challenge, kind of processing all of that.
That's usually the sign of an amateur actor too, not just kids.
Yeah. Blah, 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 blah.
Let's go to the shops. Oh, and so it's, compared to the mum and the dad, it's just these lovely, beautifully recorded things. That is quite a challenge to really, and not only like to make it sound neat and compressed and everything, but like that spike often really overloads the microphone and the preamp, and it kind of can sound a bit harsh sometimes. But it's sort of
Chord 'em low.
Do you deal with that?
Kind of how they speak with these things.
Yeah. So do you deal with that with clip gain in your Pro Tools session, or are you just using purely compression and peak limiting?
A bit of both. Yeah. I mean, first thing I'll do when I'm treating the dialogue is I'll clip gain everything. And you try and turn those peaks down, clip gain those as much as you can without it sounding too weird, bleeding into the next word. But then, I run. There's probably a couple of compressors in the dialogue chain. They're not doing terribly much, and it's not a super fast attack time or anything. And a lot of it's just writing the faders. Like, I've got everything compressing to a certain level, but then you just you see those things and you just kind of dip the fader on it. And it ends up not sounding so bad. But
are you really using a fader, or are you drawing it?
No, I've got an actual fader. Yeah, whatever speeds me up these days.
Yeah. It's funny how many studios don't have faders these days. It's crazy, coming from the old school guy who started on tape.
Well, I guess the bottom line is the actor's job is to provide what they ask for, and if it doesn't sound great, it's out of their hands.
Well, that's our job. Yeah, absolutely.
Move on.
Totally.
I was going to ask how you handle levels. So if they're kids and they're more dynamic, and that do you just set a really conservative level, and really nothing should clip, and then just clip gain it all up like when you're all done?
Yes and no. I if I'm the one recording the kid, I'll be in the room, and the director's usually in the room with the kid or with me as well. And I just you've got to really be pretty present, and the director will say the line and the kid parrots it straight back. And so if the director, it's a shouty line that you hear him say, you just quickly lower the gain pot and you try and crank it up, because kids can speak so quietly on some lines. So you're just kind of riding the gain pots on the fly. And some really escape through. It's because some is just too quick and the kids will just shout a line and it will distort to hell. But you can kind of fix most of that with RX declip. If it's really bad, you might be lucky enough to get a retake. But in the end, like a lot of sort of audio sins make it to print just because it's a good performance and people don't really notice.
Here's the old trick with production. Take the mic, split it into two preamps, keep one hot, the other one cool, and record to stereo.
Yep. That's a good trick.
Yeah, well, we did record with two mics for a while. One set quite low, but I don't know, it just fell out of that practice for a while.
I wonder if the Yellowtech Puck 2 Mic Leah interface would be nice for you. It has an unbelievably fast auto sensing input gain control. So it's like a compressor, but it's controlling the input gain automatically based on your parameters. So you can say, I want a maximum range of 12 dB on the gain control, for example, or 20 dB. And it's faster than human hands. It's much faster than you can ever control it, but it will never, ever clip. And it's not AGC, and it's sort of compression, but it's not. I don't know. I've seen some demonstrations. I was extremely impressed with it. It could be super. It could be really nice for recording kids and really unpredictable sources.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The other similar product is the Aphex, who's actually now an Australian company, has it's a patented thing. It's called mic limb, and they have some sort of feedback that basically when the mic preamp goes up to a certain or outputs a certain level, it literally turns the gain down on itself. But it's gain at the mic preamp, so it again can't clip. But theirs is called mic limb, and I think you can only get it on Aphex preamps.
There's also the Video Mic NTG from Rode, which has the same thing. It's recording 2 channels, one normal level, and the other one is minus 20 dB, I think, from memory.
Yeah, it does that on a
there
USB
you go.
mic.
That's clever.
And Tascam's got a recorder that does that too, but that's more on the record side. You know, when you're working in post, you just want to collect it so you can move forward with all the stuff. And it'd be pretty easy to find the other side of a stereo file if that had the unclipped material.
Yeah. But if Dan's working with a Neumann, sounds like George's one would be the go for you, mate.
Yeah, definitely going to look into it.
Better have a word to your brother, buddy.
Technology. It's a German product. The unit's about $1,000 US. It's an interface, but it does have an output, so you don't have to track through the USB interface. You know, you can just use it as a pre. In stereo. So it'd be interesting to see if that could become part of a workflow. That ever since I saw it at NAB here in Vegas, like 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, wow, that's incredible. That's impressive technology. They first put it inside a handheld microphone. Actually,
I'm just not convinced. It's not a compressor in the end result. It's compression. Like it's always because it's so fast.
It's a bit like Vocal Rider, that Waves plugin, I would presume. It's not compression as such. It's just sort of writing the input.
It sort of is what a compressor is, right? Like even volume writing.
Yeah.
I think it is compression. As soon as you're changing the gain over time based on the volume of the output of its output or potential output,
that's a form of compression.
It's just maybe a new kind of compression. You know, you have optical compression and all these different. You know,
it's like
this
intelligent
is just a new technology.
DSP compression. Yeah,
sounds like the audio department of Bluey needs a budget increase, though, Dan.
Yeah, that'd be handy.
Maybe we'll get one this year.
Send a message to the producers for me, please.
Yes, indeed. Well, if they're listening, you heard it here first.
Yeah. Actually, another way you could do it too is you could actually get I was going to say a stereo mic, but then you'd have to run it properly in Omni. But you could just have 2 41.6s or 2 mics patched in left and right, one running a really low level.
You split the microphone and then you run phantom power on one preamp and not on the other.
I also have a $300 audio interface that does it. I have the MicPort Pro 2, and it has a 12 dB down channel. So it gives you a safety channel built into the little $300 preamp. So
I've got a little radial box that does that splits. So that would be perfect. Just have the radial box going into 2 different pre's.
There you go, Dan. We solved your problem 17 different ways,
Absolutely.
And you never even asked.
Yeah, man.
He might not have even had a problem.
How good is this?
4-man splinters, no waiting, baby.
We just created Dan a problem. We just gave him one.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty stuck in my ways. I'll keep riding the faders myself, I think.
Yeah, it's funny how because you just think, shit, if I change something now, then I've got to change the way I work and blah, blah, blah. And when you're
104.
when you're under the pump.
104
I'm 104 episodes in. I think I've got the workflow.
I've nailed it now. Yeah, absolutely.
Some things certainly escape.
Don't go to a NAMM show. Don't go to any of those pro audio shows. Just stay home. You don't want to see anything new, trust me.
No.
Don't get on the internet, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
This show was mixed by Voodoo Radio Imaging. Edit by Andrew Peters. Using Rode microphones and Source Connect Now. Tech support from George the Tech Whittam. And supported by Harlan Hogan's VoiceOverEssentials.com. The home of the Portabooth Pro.